When I tell people now, at 71, they always react to the headline of it. My best friend married your husband? Their eyes widen. Their mouths form a small, shocked O. They expect me to spit out bitterness like it's still fresh, like I'm still standing in the ashes of that marriage with my fists clenched. But I don't. Because that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was what I didn't understand until years later. When the dust settled, when the children grew, when the world stopped calling me poor thing and moved on. The worst part was realizing that what broke my heart wasn't just an affair. It was an arrangement. It was intent. And it began long before I ever caught them. If you're watching this from your phone in bed, or listening while you wash dishes, tell me where you're watching from in the comments. I like to picture real people on the other side of these words. And if you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted, someone who smiled in your face, type, I understand, in the comments. I promise you, you're not the only one. My name is Lenora Whitfield. I live outside Asheville now, where the mornings smell like damp earth and pine, and where my porch swing creaks the same way it did when my knees were younger and my heart was less cautious. I keep a small garden. I bake when I'm nervous. I still fold towels the way my mother taught me, crisp and neat, like order can protect you from pain. Sometimes, when the wind is right, I can still smell the old life I lost. Cigarette smoke on a wool coat, fresh paint in our first house, the sharp sweetness of perfume my best friend used to wear. That's the thing about betrayal. It doesn't leave all at once. It lingers in ordinary places. Back then, I was 24 and still believed love was the kind of thing you could earn if you did enough right. I'd married Tom Whitfield after a short, bright courtship that felt like summer lightning. Fast, hot, and thrilling. He had that easy charm that made waitresses laugh and older women call him such a nice young man. He worked in insurance, wore crisp shirts, and kissed my forehead like I was precious. I was a bank teller then, saving for night classes, dreaming of becoming a bookkeeper, maybe even opening my own small accounting service one day. I wanted a life that felt stable and warm. A life where the lights stayed on, where the pantry was full, where you didn't have to hold your breath before opening the mailbox. Tom promised me that life. And my best friend, Marla Keene. She was the one who held my hand through all of it. Marla and I met in high school. She was the kind of girl teachers watched carefully, not because she was bad, but because she was magnetic. People leaned toward her without realizing it. Her laughter filled rooms. She had glossy dark hair and cat-like eyes, and she moved like she knew the world would make space for her. I was quieter, softer. The kind of girl who remembered birthdays and brought extra pencils and listened more than she spoke. Marla used to say, "Lenny, you're the kind of woman men marry when they're ready to be good." At the time, I thought it was a compliment. When Tom and I got married, Marla cried at my wedding. She hugged me so tight my veil shifted. "You deserve everything," she whispered into my ear, and her perfume, white flowers and something sharp, clung to me the whole day. We bought a small house with a narrow kitchen and squeaky floors. I painted the living room a buttery yellow. Tom hung our wedding photo in the hallway. I cooked dinners that filled the place with the smell of onions and garlic and hope. And Marla. Marla was always there. She'd stop by with a bottle of wine and a story about her latest date. She'd sprawl on my couch like she lived there, kicking her shoes off, laughing at Tom's jokes a little too loudly. I didn't mind. Back then, I believed loyalty was permanent. I believed that the people who loved you wouldn't harm you on purpose. The first clue didn't come as lipstick on a collar or a late-night phone call. It came as a feeling. A small shift in the air when Marla entered a room. One evening, maybe 2 years into my marriage, Marla came over for dinner. I'd made roast chicken with potatoes, the kind of meal my mother used to call a proper supper. The kitchen smelled like thyme and browned butter. The radio hummed softly on the counter. Tom came home late, loosening his tie as he walked in. He looked tired, but when he saw Marla sitting at our table, his face brightened in a way I hadn't seen in weeks. "Well, look who it is," he said, grinning. Marla smiled up at him. Slow. Familiar. "Hi, Tommy," she said, like the name belonged in her mouth. I remember my hand freezing over the cutting board for half a second. The knife paused mid-slice. Tommy. No one called him that. Not even his mother. I laughed lightly, the way women laugh when they're trying to make a strange thing feel normal. "Since when do you call him that?" I asked. Marla waved her hand. "Oh, I don't know. It just fits him." Tom didn't look at me. He went straight to the sink, washed his hands, and started telling Marla about his day, details he never bothered to tell me anymore. Later that night, after Marla left, I stood in the doorway of our bedroom rubbing lotion into my hands, watching Tom brush his teeth like nothing had happened. "You seemed happy she came over," I said casually. Tom spit, rinsed, and shrugged. "Marla's fun. She brings energy." Energy. I stared at him, waiting for him to notice the ache behind my eyes. But he didn't. In the weeks that followed, little things began to stack up like folded laundry you keep pretending you'll put away. Tom started guarding his briefcase. He kept it close, even in the house. He'd step outside to take calls and come back with his voice smoother, his face closed off. Marla started calling more often. Not just me, Tom too. I'd hear him laughing in the living room, the sound low and private, and when I walked in, he'd clear his throat and say, "It's just Marla checking in." Checking in. Like she belonged to both of us. I tried to ignore it. I told myself I was being insecure. I told myself friendship between a husband and a best friend was harmless, even healthy. But my body didn't believe the lies my mind was making. Because there's a kind of knowing that lives under your ribs. It tightens when something is wrong. One Saturday morning, I went to Marla's apartment to drop off a casserole. She'd said she was sick. It was a small place above a nail salon, smelling faintly of acetone and cheap incense. She opened the door in an oversized t-shirt, hair messy, eyes puffy. "Lenny," she said, sounding surprised. "I brought you food," I said, stepping in. Her living room was cluttered, magazines, empty mugs, a blanket tossed on the couch. And on the coffee table was Tom's favorite lighter. The brass one with the tiny scratch on the side. I'd bought it for him for Christmas. My stomach dipped like a sudden drop on a staircase. I picked it up slowly. "Marla, why do you have this?" Her eyes flicked to it, then away. "Oh, that. Tom left it here the other day. He stopped by to see if I needed anything." I held the lighter in my palm, feeling the cool metal. "The other day," I repeated. "Tom told me he was working late." Marla's smile twitched. "Maybe he came after work." I stared at her, and for a moment I saw it. Just a flash of something behind her eyes. Calculation. A quick mental adjustment. I set the lighter down gently, as if roughness would make the truth louder. "Is there something going on?" I asked, my voice quiet. Marla laughed. Too sharp. "Oh my God, Lenora. Don't start. You're my best friend. Tom is your husband. Why would you even?" "Because my stomach hurts every time you say his name," I said, and my own honesty startled me. Marla's face softened in a practiced way. She stepped closer, touched my arm. You're tired, she murmured. You've been working so much. You're imagining things. Imagining. That word was a slap disguised as comfort. I left her apartment with the casserole still in my hands, untouched. I sat in my car and stared at the steering wheel until my vision blurred. The air smelled like hot vinyl and my own fear. I didn't confront Tom that day. I went home and cleaned the kitchen like I could scrub the worry out of the grout. I folded towels. I polished the sink until it shone. And when Tom came home, I kissed him on the cheek and asked how his day was, because I wasn't ready yet to hear him lie. But the suspicion didn't leave. It grew teeth. If you've ever ignored a red flag because you didn't want your life to change, tell me in the comments. Just one word, me. And if you're enjoying this kind of slow burn story, like the video and subscribe. Because some truths take time to unfold, but they always unfold. The discovery came on a rainy Tuesday. The kind of rain that makes the world feel muffled and intimate. The windows fogged. The gutters overflowed. The house smelled like wet earth. Tom had left his jacket on the back of a chair. I wasn't searching it like a detective. I was just hanging it up, trying to be a good wife in a marriage that was slipping through my fingers. And in the inner pocket, I found a small envelope. Inside was a receipt from a jewelry store. A women's bracelet. Engraving included. My heart started to pound, slow and heavy. I wasn't a bracelet woman. I didn't wear much jewelry. Tom knew that. He used to tease me, calling me simple and practical. I stared at that receipt until the numbers blurred. Then I heard the phone ring. I picked it up, and Marla's voice floated through like she'd been waiting. "Hey, Lenny," she said brightly. "What are you doing?" My throat went dry. "I'm standing in my kitchen," I said, "holding a receipt for a bracelet you didn't buy for yourself." Silence. 1 beat. 2. Then she sighed, long and theatrical. "Lenora," she said, "don't make this ugly." That's when I knew. Because innocent people don't talk like that. I don't remember hanging up the phone. I remember standing there in the kitchen, rain ticking against the window like a nervous clock, the receipt shaking slightly in my hand. My legs felt weak, the way they do when you've been standing too long and suddenly realize you might fall. "Don't make this ugly." That was what she said. Not "it's not what you think." Not "let me explain." Not even "I'm sorry." Just a warning. Tom came home an hour later. He shook the rain from his coat in the doorway, kissed my cheek like it was habit, and went to pour himself a drink. I watched him the whole time. The way his shoulders moved. The way he avoided my eyes just a fraction longer than usual. "We need to talk," I said. He froze for half a second. Just long enough. "About what?" he asked, already defensive. I held up the receipt. "About this." His face drained slowly, like color being pulled out of a photograph. He set the glass down carefully, too carefully. "Where did you get that?" he asked. "From your jacket," I said. "The one you left on my chair." He rubbed the back of his neck. "Lenora, it's not." "Don't," I said quietly. My voice surprised even me. Calm. Flat. "Don't lie to me now. I've been lied to enough." He sat down at the table, elbows on the surface we'd eaten so many meals at. Meals I'd cooked. Meals Marla had shared with us, laughing like she belonged there. "It just happened," he said. "It wasn't planned." I laughed then. A small, broken sound. "Funny. Because there's an engraving." He flinched. "That bracelet," I continued, "isn't for me. And I know exactly who it's for." He didn't deny it. That was worse than the affair itself. I didn't mean for you to find out like this, he said, as if there was a better way. Marla and we've been talking for a long time. How long? I asked. He hesitated. A few years. A few years. I felt something crack inside me, slow and quiet. Not explode. Just split. All those dinners, I said. All those phone calls. You letting her call you Tommy in my house. He looked down. She understands me. I nodded. So did I. Once. He reached for my hand. I pulled it back. What are you going to do? I asked. He swallowed. I don't know. That answer told me everything. I slept on the couch that night. The cushions smelled faintly of Marla's perfume, and I nearly laughed at the cruelty of it. Tom didn't come after me. He didn't apologize again. He went to bed and closed the door. By morning, my marriage was already over. It just hadn't caught up to the paperwork yet. The divorce was quick. Clean. People told me I was handling it with grace. They brought casseroles and whispered sympathy like it was a contagious illness. Marla didn't come around anymore. She sent one message, a long one, full of explanations and justifications. She said she never meant to hurt me. She said feelings aren't choices. She said she hoped one day I'd understand. I deleted it without replying. 6 months later, they were married. I didn't go to the wedding. I heard about it anyway. Someone always tells you. The dress. The venue. The way Tom cried during the vows. I moved into a smaller apartment and threw myself into work. I took extra hours. I started night classes like I'd once planned, telling myself this was the life I'd wanted before love distracted me. Years passed. I healed, in the way people do when they have no other choice. I remarried briefly, then divorced again quietly. No drama. No betrayal. Just two people realizing love wasn't enough. And if the story ended there, it would be painful, but ordinary. That's why people think they know it. What I didn't know, what took nearly 15 years to surface, was that the affair was only one layer. The worst part came later. It began with a letter. I was 42 by then, settled into my bookkeeping work, living alone, comfortable in my routines. The letter came from a bank I didn't recognize, addressed to Mrs. Lenora Whitfield. Inside was a notice about an account adjustment, a balance correction, a balance in my name that I'd never opened. At first, I assumed it was a mistake. I called the number listed. A young man with a cheerful voice asked me to verify my identity, my social security number, my date of birth. Then he said something that made my stomach drop. This account was opened jointly, he said, with your former husband. My former husband. And your signature appears on the original documents. I hung up without answering him. That night, I pulled out the old divorce papers from a box I hadn't opened in years. I spread them across my dining table, the pages whispering against one another. There were documents I didn't recognize. Addendums. Financial disclosures I had no memory of signing. Slowly, painfully, the picture came together. Tom hadn't just fallen in love with Marla. He'd needed her. He'd been drowning in debt long before our marriage ended. Bad investments. Loans he never told me about. And when I became distracted, heartbroken, ashamed, trying to survive, he'd used my trust. My signature had been forged. My name attached to accounts and guarantees I never agreed to. And Marla. Marla had worked at a brokerage firm by then. She understood numbers, paperwork, loopholes. They didn't just betray me emotionally. They positioned me. I sat at that table until my coffee went cold, staring at the evidence. My hands didn't shake this time. I felt older, sharper. I contacted a lawyer. The investigation took months. Subpoenas, records, handwriting analysis, conversations that felt like peeling skin off old wounds. When Tom was confronted, he tried to deny it. When Marla was confronted, she cried. She asked to meet me. I agreed. We met in a quiet cafe. Different city, different table, same kind of smell. Coffee and regret. She looked older. So did I. I never thought you'd find out, she said, twisting her napkin. I know, I replied. We needed it, she said. We were trying to build something. You built it on me, I said. Without my consent. She looked up then, eyes glossy. You always had stability. I wanted that. There it was. Not love. Envy. The case didn't go to trial. They settled quietly. Accounts were closed. My name was cleared. The money. Some of it returned. Some of it gone forever. Tom and Marla divorced not long after. I heard about that too. Funny how betrayal doesn't always keep its promises. Now, at 71, I don't hate them. But I don't excuse them either. What hurt most wasn't losing my husband or my best friend. It was realizing how carefully they planned to use my goodness against me. If you've ever trusted someone who saw your kindness as an opportunity, tell me in the comments. Just one word, used. And if you've stayed with me this far, thank you. These stories aren't easy to tell, but they're easier when they're heard. In the next part, I'll tell you how the truth finally became public, and how choosing dignity over revenge changed the rest of my life. When the truth finally stepped out of the shadows, it didn't arrive with drama. No raised voices. No courtroom spectacle. No one pointing fingers in a crowded room. It came quietly, like most truths do, through paperwork, whispered confirmations, and the slow shifting of how people looked at me. The lawyer advised discretion. He said dragging it all into public view would cost me more than it would give back. He wasn't wrong. I'd already paid enough in years, in sleep, in dignity. I didn't want revenge. I wanted my name clean. I wanted my life back in my own hands. Still, secrets have a way of surfacing, even when you don't push them. It started at work. One afternoon, I overheard two colleagues speaking in low voices near the copy machine. My name floated between them, light but unmistakable. When they noticed me, their faces shifted, surprise, then something close to respect. Later that day, my supervisor called me into her office. She closed the door gently and gestured for me to sit. I just wanted you to hear this from me, she said. There's been information going around about your former marriage. I nodded. My hands rested calmly in my lap. I'd learned how to hold myself steady by then. I know, I said. She looked at me carefully. I want you to know, it doesn't change how we see you. If anything, it explains your strength. That word again. Strength. For so many years, people had mistaken my silence for fragility. They didn't see that silence had been my way of surviving. Now, without me saying a word, the story was rewriting itself. Not as gossip, as truth. Word reached extended family next. Cousins I hadn't heard from in years sent cautious messages. Some apologized for choosing sides back then. Some didn't apologize at all, but their discomfort spoke loudly enough. And Marla. Marla tried to disappear. She moved cities, changed jobs, changed her hair. But you can't outrun what you've done. Especially when the foundation of your life was built on someone else's trust. One afternoon, years after the settlement, I ran into her unexpectedly at a grocery store in a town I didn't live in anymore. She was standing in the cereal aisle, staring too long at a box she clearly wasn't reading. For a moment, we both pretended not to see each other. Then she looked up. Our eyes met. Time folded in on itself in that quiet aisle. I noticed things I hadn't before. The lines near her mouth, the tension in her shoulders, the way her confidence seemed practiced now, not natural. "Lenora," she said softly. "Marla," I replied. Neither of us moved closer. "I heard you're doing well," she said. I nodded. "I am." She hesitated. I never meant for it to go that far. I studied her face. There was regret there. Real regret. But it was mixed with something else. Self-pity. The kind that still centers itself. "I know," I said. And I meant it. "You didn't mean for me to find out." She flinched. We stood there in silence, the hum of fluorescent lights filling the space between us. "I hope you're happy," she finally said. I looked at her then, not with anger, not with satisfaction, but with clarity. "I'm at peace," I replied. "That matters more." I walked away before she could answer. That was the last time I saw her. If you're still listening right now, I want to pause for just a moment. If someone once mistook your kindness for weakness, tell me in the comments. Just the word, enough. And if this story feels familiar in any way, don't forget to like and subscribe. These stories don't get told often, but they matter. Peace didn't come overnight. It arrived in small, ordinary moments. The first time I signed a document without fear. The first time I laughed without checking who might overhear. The first time I trusted my own judgment again. I moved houses again, this time by choice, not necessity. A small place with good light and a creaky porch. I painted the walls myself. Chose the furniture slowly. Nothing rushed. Nothing borrowed from someone else's vision of who I should be. I began mentoring younger women at work. Quietly. Not as a lesson, but as presence. I noticed how many of them apologized before speaking, how many doubted their instincts. I didn't tell them my story. I didn't have to. I simply listened. Sometimes, late in the evenings, I'd sit with a cup of tea and think about the younger version of myself, the woman who believed loyalty meant endurance, who thought love required self-erasure. I don't judge her anymore. She did the best she could with what she knew. What age teaches you, if you're willing to learn, is that betrayal doesn't define you. What defines you is what you refuse to become afterward. I never became bitter. I never became cruel. I never became small. And that was my quiet victory. If my younger self were sitting across from me now, I'd take her hands and say this. Pay attention to the moments when something inside you tightens. That's not fear, it's knowledge. And you don't owe anyone your silence. I'll end this part here. In the final section, I'll share what forgiveness actually looked like for me. Not the pretty version people post about, but the honest one. And I'll ask you one last question that stayed with me for years. Forgiveness didn't arrive the way people like to describe it. It didn't feel light. It didn't feel freeing at first. And it certainly didn't feel noble. For a long time, forgiveness felt like a word other people used when they wanted me to hurry up and be done with my pain. Forgive them, they'd say gently. Don't carry it anymore. You'll feel better. But what they never said was how. What they never acknowledged was that forgiveness, real forgiveness, requires truth to come first. And truth takes time. Sometimes decades. I didn't forgive Tom or Marla while the wounds were open. I didn't forgive them when my name was dragged through paperwork, or when I woke up some mornings with my chest tight and my jaw clenched from grinding my teeth in my sleep. I forgave them much later, after my life stopped revolving around them. After I stopped rehearsing conversations in my head that would never happen. After their choices no longer dictated how I moved through the world. Forgiveness came quietly one afternoon when I was watering my plants. The sun was warm on my arms, the hose leaking slightly at the connection, soaking my shoe. I remember laughing at myself for not fixing it sooner. And suddenly, without warning, I realized something simple and true. They no longer owned any part of me. Not my past. Not my future. Not even my anger. Forgiveness wasn't about letting them off the hook. It was about unhooking myself. At 71, I don't replay the wedding photos in my mind anymore. I don't imagine alternate endings. I don't wonder who I would have been if things had gone differently. Because this life, the one I built slowly, honestly, with both hands, is mine. I learned to trust myself again. I learned to listen when something felt wrong. I learned that love should never require you to shrink. And most importantly, I learned that betrayal says far more about the people who commit it than the ones who survive it. If you're listening to this right now and holding on to a story you've never told, something you buried to keep the peace, I want you to know this. You don't have to shout it. You don't have to expose anyone. You don't even have to forgive today. But you do deserve to believe yourself. Before I go, I want to ask you something. From one woman who has lived a long, imperfect life to another soul listening quietly on the other side of this screen. If you could speak to your younger self, just once, what truth would you finally tell her? Would you tell her to stay? To leave? To trust her instincts? Or to stop apologizing for needing more? Tell me in the comments. I read every word. And if stories like this make you feel a little less alone, don't forget to like and subscribe. There are so many truths still waiting to be spoken. So I'll leave you with this final question, the one I carried for years before I learned to answer it myself. If you were me, would you have made the same choice?